Crooks Tower in South Dakota, one of the highest points in the Black Hills, and stands at about 7,137 feet above sea level. This prominent peak was named in honor of General George Crook, a U.S. Army officer who played a notable role in the Indian Wars. General Crook was involved in several military campaigns in the western United States during the late 19th century, particularly in the Black Hills region. Crook was known for his complex relations with Native American tribes, as he often advocated for fairer treatment of Native Americans compared to some of his contemporaries. However, he was also involved in battles that led to conflict and displacement. His influence in the region during a pivotal time in its history likely contributed to his name being associated with this significant landmark. General George Crook was a U.S. Army officer best known for his service during the Indian Wars and the American Civil War. Born in Ohio, Crook graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point in 1852. After graduating, Crook served in the Pacific Northwest, where he fought against indigenous tribes like the Rogue River and Yakima. This experience was formative in developing his understanding of Native American cultures, which he respected more than many of his peers did. Throughout his military career, he gained a reputation as a skilled strategist and leader, who often took an empathetic approach toward Native American tribes, advocating for fairer policies. During the American Civil War, Crook fought in key campaigns, primarily in the Western Theater. He led the Army of the Cumberland in battles across Virginia, Tennessee, and West Virginia, and was noted for his effectiveness in leading Union raids that disrupted Confederate supply lines. After the Civil War, he was married to Mary Tapscott Daly in 1865. The couple did not have any children, but Crook's wife played a supportive role throughout his military career, often accompanying him to various army posts. Crook was known to be close to his extended family, and his siblings were part of his support system throughout his life. Crook returned to the western frontier, where he became a central figure in the Indian Wars. His assignments took him to the Great Plains, the Black Hills, and the Southwest. He led successful campaigns against the Sioux, Apache, and other tribes, but often sought peaceful resolutions and advocated for fair treatment. Crook's approach stood out in the post-Civil War period, as he promoted the idea that treaties should be honored and that Native Americans deserved respectful treatment. One of Crook's most notable campaigns was in 1876, when he pursued the Sioux and Cheyenne tribes after the Great Sioux War began. Crook was involved in the Battle of the Rosebud, where he encountered strong resistance from Native forces. The Battle of the Rosebud, fought on June 17, 1876, in southeastern Montana Territory, was one of the largest battles between the U.S. Army and Native American forces during the Great Sioux War of 1876. The battle involved the U.S. forces under General George Crook, and a large alliance of Lakota Sioux and Northern Cheyenne warriors led by Crazy Horse. It was significant for its scale, tactics, and outcome, which had lasting effects on the campaign against the Native American tribes resisting U.S. government efforts to confine them to reservations. The battle occurred in the context of rising tensions between Native Americans and the U.S. government. In the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, the Black Hills were recognized as Sioux territory, but the discovery of gold in the Black Hills in 1874 led to a rush of white settlers. Tensions escalated as the U.S. attempted to push the Sioux and other Plains tribes onto reservations. In early 1876, the U.S. military launched a three-pronged campaign to confront the Lakota and Northern Cheyenne. General George Crook, who led one column, moved north from Wyoming. On the morning of June 17, 1876, General Crook's forces, consisting of about 1,300 soldiers and scouts, were moving along Rosebud Creek when they were ambushed by a combined force of approximately 1,500 native warriors under Crazy Horse. The battle stretched across the hills and valleys of the Rosebud Valley for about 6 hours, with both sides launching aggressive charges and counterattacks. The native forces used the terrain to their advantage, executing flanking maneuvers that pushed Crook's forces back and inflicted significant casualties. Crook was ultimately forced to withdraw, and he retreated south, effectively removing his forces from the campaign for several weeks. His withdrawal had critical consequences for the Battle of the Little Bighorn, fought just 8 days later, where Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer and his men would famously face defeat. While the Battle of the Rosebud did not have a clear victor, It was a strategic win for the Native American forces. It delayed Crook's advance and kept his soldiers away from the decisive clash at Little Bighorn. The battle showed the effectiveness of Native American tactics and underscored the challenges the U.S. military faced in subduing the tribes on their own lands. The Battle of the Rosebud is remembered as a rare occasion where Native American forces fought the U.S. Army to a standstill and successfully protected their territory, if only for a short time. Crook was caught off guard by the strength and coordination of the native forces, despite the determination of his soldiers. Crook's inability to gain a decisive victory over Crazy Horse's warriors weakened his campaign's position. Crook faced criticism for his decision to retreat and not rejoin the forces that later engaged in the Battle of the Little Bighorn. While Crook wasn't formally reprimanded, his retreat at the Rosebud became a point of debate. Some saw it as prudent given the Native American force and the lack of supplies, while others felt he missed an opportunity to further weaken the native forces in a critical moment of the Great Sioux War. Crook's role in the broader context of the Indian Wars was complex. He was both a military adversary and an advocate for reform in Native American policy. Crook's empathy toward Native American issues grew over time, and he became one of the most vocal advocates for reform in their treatment by the U.S. government. His work with the Apache, especially with leaders like Geronimo, illustrated his respect for their resistance and cultural identity. Crook passed away in 1890, but his legacy remains nuanced. Today he is remembered as a complex figure whose approach to the Indian Wars was uncommonly progressive for his time. His actions led to places like Crook's Tower in South Dakota being named in his honor, reflecting both his military significance and his relatively unique stance on indigenous rights in the 19th century.